Welcome to Industry Insiders, where we explore the people, ideas, and innovations shaping the A&D world. I'm your host, Shivani Vyas, and today we have Lindsay Braun, who will share her insights from Emblem with us today. Lindsay, we are so excited to have you on board, and we're excited to learn more about your journey with Emblem, and very curious. So how did it all start? You know, there was a chance conversation in a Seattle cafe from what I've read about you, and that turned into a lifelong partnership in both life and business. So, please share with us more about that.
Yeah, sure. So, I met my husband and business partner in a very Seattle way. We both lived in the same neighborhood about, a couple blocks from the Space Needle. So, I met Jeffrey, my husband, at a coffee shop right in our neighborhood in line for coffee. So, at that time, he had his own residential furniture line. It was in showrooms, on the West Coast. And I was working in government communications and did not really think that much about furniture or design. I was really focused on growing my career and certainly didn't think this man I met in a coffee shop, I would, start a furniture company with. But as these things go, we started dating and I was collating fabric memos on the floor of his apartment during our dates. And it sort of just went from there. I've never really, our whole relationship has always been sort of collaboration, helping each other. We have a very yin yang set of skills that very much helps in business to have someone who's good at things you're not good at. And so we have that balance really well. And it's been a lot of fun. We've been married for 17 years, working together since our very first year of marriage. So it's been quite a journey.
So 17 years. Wow. And so it sounds like you had the idea and the collaboration is right from the start.
Yes. What I saw was just that Jeffrey's he's very design minded. I mean, he can walk into a space probably much like a lot of interior designers I know can walk into a space and just gets a lot of energy from seeing the possibilities in a space. He has that just in spades, is designing furniture, at dinner on napkins sometimes. So right away I saw this talent, and I was very motivated to sort of just give him more space to do that type of work. And he was doing everything in the business, including sales and design. And it was pretty small, but the designs were beautiful. So that's where it started.
I love that story. So I know, did I get this right? He was previously in the film industry and then he switched over to interior design.
Yes. So he had worked in his early 20s in Chicago and did commercial sets. So he worked on Gatorade commercials with Michael Jordan and did a few things on the Oprah show. So he met all these interesting people in Chicago. But he said that when a set was done, it was just destroyed. It's just over right away. And that always made him, sad that these things he worked so hard on visually would be destroyed right afterwards. So that sort of led him into interiors and ultimately furniture, which was his favorite aspect of interior design.
So it sounds like he was still designing just in a different avenue for those years. And then you were in government in communication. So what would you say, both of you combined, how did those unique backgrounds shape your approach to furniture design and furniture business?
I mean, I think in any creative pursuit, you need that freedom of creativity of thought. And then you also need to organize it, right? You need to have a clear set of boundaries to be able to bring something to life. So I was I worked in communications in the government. I worked for sort of a communications firm doing a lot for different brands and everything from nonprofits to smaller businesses to some larger businesses and groups. So I was doing sort of branding communication for those groups. So the first work I did with Jeffrey was basically, putting a press kit together for him. How are we going to communicate about what you do? Helping him with his website. Those were the first things I did while I was at my day job. I would come home and just sort of work on it with him. Over time, what it's grown into now with Emblem is that I'm at the helm of a lot of our business day to day. I work a lot on larger projects with design firms and purchasing agents to make sure that all of our systems are very much in line with what they need, communicating what they need back. So I'm directing a lot of those efforts to keep the creativity organized. That's a lot of what my role is.
What inspired you both to transition? I know originally Jeffrey had Jeffrey Braun Furniture, and then you started Emblem. So at that time when you were both collaborating, what new industry goals or needs were you hoping to meet at that time? What gap did you see, if any, in the market?
Sure. So with his first company, which I came on board with like early in our marriage, and we had that company for I was at that company for almost 15 years, 14 years maybe. So one thing that sort of grew through that company through like the 2008 recession, and some things were out of old residential, contacts and work that Jeffrey had done. We started doing more hospitality projects, which gave way to some additional workplace projects. And we loved that work. We loved commercial work so much. But our previous company was just, to look at it, you would think this is a residential company. The designs were more residential. There was a lot of exposed wood. It was like that time period where it was like dark espresso, wood finishes, and, that era. So we were, Jeffrey was designing very different types of furniture, doing very different types of projects together, the two of us. But the branding and our business didn't reflect that. Even the way it was set up, it wasn't set up to, to easily service commercial projects. So what we found out was the reason why so many designers were coming to us is because when they were working on commercial projects, they wanted furniture that would last, but they wanted it to look more residential. So they would say, "Oh, I love this design. Do you think can you build it to last in my workplace? Can you do something like this, but it's for a shopping mall?" And because we were doing so much custom, we'd say, "Yes, we know if we change this type of construction, this type of foam, we can still have it look much more warm and residential, but have it last in a commercial environment." So that is really when we decided to, we had some personal things happen where it was like, you only live once, and we want to build the business that we can be proud of and that is applicable to what we want to do now. So we started working on Emblem, and Jeffrey took on another job. We sold that previous company. And then I just started working on Emblem alone at the beginning of like 2019. So we launched it right before the pandemic. So we like to say that like pandemic was like incubation time. And it was actually, it was a good time to sort of figure some things out about what we wanted to do. And so that in that respect, it was helpful. The aspect of being commercial products with a residential feel was the base, and you can see it reflected in our designs throughout our website, and even what we're designing now. Everything has much more crown. There's a softness to it. Nothing is flat. Everything has a little bit of a curve, sort of a welcoming softness to the designs, and that was really important to us.
So it sounds like you were working on the company alone and right at the brink of the pandemic. So what was that like? Were you overwhelmed? Were you stressed, or was it smooth? How was that transition?
I would be lying if I said it was smooth. It definitely wasn't. It was hard. And I know some people out there, had some, type of work that came in that sort of made the pandemic sort of tolerable. It was a roller coaster ride. We have 2 young children. Our whole livelihood is our business. So right away, having sort of all that work just sort of stop. That we had gained some sort of excitement about what we were doing. And then, the brakes kind of were put on for a while. But we were lucky that we had some, private label partnerships. So we started managing some furniture production for, some other brands that had smaller, more defined lines. And that was really when we started leaning into more of our custom work, which helped us kind of figure some things out and get off the ground. But it was really challenging like everyone else, my kids were underfoot. I was trying to do homeschool while starting a company. We actually moved. So just to cut back on expenses because we were starting a new company. So we did all these, we basically, with our company, we very much went all in, even though it was a very difficult time. But I'm grateful for it now because as soon as things started to open up back again, we've really enjoyed some growth and meeting so many new customers that like what we're doing, and it's very rewarding so far.
So it sounds like looking back, full of a life full of roller coaster, full of decisions, both in personal and professional, and then balancing it all.
Right. Yes, very much. And I know that's a lot of realities for a lot of designers during that time period. I mean, there was a lot of shifting, people finding new jobs, people switching teams. And so there's a little bit of a camaraderie between everyone that I've noticed. Like when we get on calls or work on projects now, it's now very comfortable to see people's dogs and cats and babies. And I love that. So that's one good thing that came out of all the roller coaster.
I agree. I love that aspect of it too. Things have become a little bit more realistic, I would say, as far as balancing work and life. It almost felt like we always had to keep those two entities completely separate. And so it's nice to have that mix now.
Yes. I also think a big part of starting Emblem for me personally was that I always wanted to keep it very authentic, because in the first part of my career, when Jeffrey had his company and I was new to design, I was very much like, I don't want to mess up. I have to impress people. I have to keep this I buttoned up, right? Like always. And with Emblem from the very beginning, we both were like, we just want to be ourselves, and we want to work with people that also want to be themselves, like share the struggle, figure it out together, because that's what makes this industry so fun.
I agree. So what would you say is your approach now? I hear you saying you want to be, or your mission was to be authentic versus, having a rigid plan and having, I guess, more of a checklist of things need to be a certain way. Now you're wanting to have that authentic perspective. Tell me more about that. So how does that shape the work culture at Emblem?
A big part of our work is custom. We do a lot of banquettes, which banquettes often need to be a custom, add to a project, because they need to fit in a certain type of space, with requirements. Dimensional requirements are all really important. And there's a lot of places people can get banquettes or furniture, just like a local person who might be able to help out. And what we always say that we offer that's different maybe is that we look at a project as, we're part of this project now. How do we make it successful? So our clients don't have to be furniture experts to work with us, which if you're buying banquettes from a local furniture person, they're going to build it in the way they're used to building it, in a way that works for them and their production workflow, their materials, all of that, which a lot of those types of factories aren't always set up for high-use commercial environments. So what we're trying to do is offer more of that consultative approach. So we get requests sometimes for banquettes that we know are not going to be successful in a workspace. And so we always push back. We say, we see your seat depth here is only 14 inches. And I know that's because you need to fit it in this space. But what if we adjusted the design in this way? Because we need to account for some pitch on the back. You don't want to be sitting straight up. You won't be able to sit there very long if it's designed this way. What if we make these changes? So we offer this consultative approach, and that's really been a big part of how we grow our team. So when we hire new people, there's a long learning curve. They sit with Jeffrey for quite a while, going through projects, looking at past designs, and then we sort of have an apprentice sort of model as they come on board, so that they know to look for certain aspects of dimensions and comfort that are unique to Emblem. Also, being that we started the company with a real focus on commercial environments and not just hospitality, which some hospitality, manufacturers use materials that are not meant to last more than maybe like a year. So all of our product is meant to go the distance for quite a while. We have 5-year warranty, but more of like a 10 to 15 year lifespan to most of our products.
So that's your signature sauce, longevity and having a consultative approach, making sure that you're not just fitting clients into a standard one size fits all process, but they're getting what they really need for their project and their space.
Yes. And that does take, I realize, some trust. You have to trust the people you're working with. Anytime you're doing a custom project, it can be stressful, especially if you haven't done it much before. So we really try to make sure that where we're working with, we take on that a little bit of that burden of, look, we are not going to ship you furniture that is going to be uncomfortable to sit in, that isn't going to work for your space. And we stand by it once it ships. If there's any problems, what can we do? Let's sort it out together. And so that's something that's more unique in custom furniture in the industry.
So design firms can have that peace of mind, it sounds like, knowing that just because they've placed the order and it's arrived, the customer service doesn't just stop there.
Right, exactly. Because, things happen. So as we all know, unfortunately, things happen. So what we always say is we can't guarantee that there won't ever be an issue, that you may have signed off on a drawing and oh my gosh, I forgot this thing was being installed and now it doesn't quite fit. But we'll always come back to the table with you to help you figure it out. Because at the end of the day, you've got a client you have to keep happy. So how can we do that together?
I love that approach. So going back to what you said earlier about your team having an extensive training period, so everyone's very experienced and knowledgeable about the process. When a firm reaches out to you, or a designer or architect reaches out to you to place an order, do they have a representative or just a point of contact that they work with the whole process, or how does that work? Or are there multiple people and touch points that they can rely on?
Our team is pretty small and focused. So, a lot of times, if it's a new customer, they'll always hear from Jeffrey or I at the beginning of a project. We personally reach out to all of our new customers so that they know who we are. So if there's any confusion throughout an order or anything, they can always send an email to us personally. We share our cell phone numbers with them. I mean, if you're freaking out, you can send me a text, and I always will take a text. So we do have that personal relationship with our customers. At the beginning of a project, we do have, I would say she's a project manager, but she's also our CAD engineer and designer. So the person that you work with also is going to be shepherding your drawings through the process if it's custom or banquettes. So you're actually getting tracking information about your order while you're, making adjustments. And that, I think, is really important. We tried a couple different things. Do we have these different roles? And really, it makes a big difference to be talking to someone who's able to make adjustments on the fly while you're working through the process with them. And they also have their finger on the pulse of the timeline and materials and what's going on in our factory. So we also do all of our own manufacturing. We opened our own manufacturing facility a couple of years ago. So we're all right here. The person that you're talking to about the design can walk across the hall and go check on your furniture, or take a quick photo and send it to you and say, here's how it's looking. What do you think? Or this is the way we're thinking about running this specific pattern and doing the match. Does that work for you? We do that because sometimes when I'm on a call, there'll be hammers. You can hear the work happening right on the other side of my wall. So we're all right here. We're in California. And, shepherding that process through with the people that have their hands on it.
So because you're a small team, you're really able to offer that one-on-one support throughout the process, it sounds like.
Yes. And as we grow, that's always been our idea. Like we built a number of processes that make things cleaner on our, some technology and things on our side. Our director of operations person that we brought on board not too long ago, a big part of her role is just developing our own like proprietary systems internally to make sure all the information is very clear, so that if someone's wondering if their fabric has arrived or they need a tracking number or any of those like multiple, all the plates that are in the air when you're doing a project. We have a lot of systems internally to keep track of those, which makes that one-on-one process much smoother.
So customers do get real-time updates then.
Yes, and we're building out some systems now to make that even more direct, so that a customer can just log in and see their quotes and their orders and status of current orders all in one place on our like a website page. So we're working on that right now. It's not quite launched, but we're working on it. So the biggest thing I think in any custom project is that communication back and forth. And sometimes you need an update, at 11 o'clock at night. So that's what we're aiming to solve that issue as well.
So with the software, you'll be able to provide even more updates than you are right now.
Exactly. Hopefully launching that in the next 3 months or so. It's in my mind as as someone who's not building these things out, it's so simple because all the information's right there. So, but as of now, you can request it anytime from our team members.
That's great to know. Well, good luck with that. That's really exciting that's coming up. So it sounds like you work with a variety of clients, from small businesses to large corporations. How would you say working with different types of commercial spaces and people influence the types of designs you're creating?
Well, we've done some hospitality work, which with hospitality, there is oftentimes a lot more bold patterns, pattern matching on the backs of banquettes, little bit brighter colors sometimes, that kind of work. And then the quoting process is a little different sometimes with hospitality versus on the commercial side. There's that is a little bit, I would say sometimes a little bit more refined in terms of designers knowing what they want. And on the hospitality side, sometimes it's a little bit more collaborative, like, well, here's the budget. How can we figure this out? In both cases, though, our output is very similar in terms of the quality of the product, the way it runs through our factory. We sort of adjust. We know that the way that this designers are working on those projects is different. So we sort of take their lead in what they need from us, especially timelines. We always ask at the beginning of a project. We often get requests like, well, what's the lead time on the project? And our first question is, I can quote you a lead time, but it's really great to know, when is your install? That way, if we know we need to push, we can push. Or if the fabric gets in later than we wanted, we can still meet your timeline if we know in advance. So that two-way communication in either type of project is so important to reaching our shared goals for a successful project.
So nailing down the timeline at the very start of the project, it sounds like.
Yeah, if possible. And knowing that things change. We just put a project through. It was very short. It was a custom project that we manufactured in 6 weeks. So that, like, it was entirely custom, but it was sort of one of these perfect storms where we just had to figure it out, and we did. So not to say we can do that on every project, but that's what good communication can do. You can get things done very quickly if you're open, vulnerable. Here's what I'm dealing with. Then we can sort it out together.
6 weeks. That's impressive.
I know. We can't do that every time. Normally we're quoting 10 to 12 weeks, sometimes 14 if there's more design time. In this case, they kind of said, here's what we need, go to town, and we'll push it through as quickly as we can. So that's what we did.
I'm glad you put that disclaimer in here. But it sounds like you're very receptive to timelines and install dates and making sure that the customers get what they want. But you're also saying, hey, let us know, going back to that point of being authentic, let us know what you're really struggling with, what the project terms are, so that we can accommodate you too.
Right. And that's really it. It's more just having communication so that we can not have any surprises, really, because That's the worst. You don't want to learn at the last minute that your project is a month late because of your custom furniture provider. That's the worst case scenario. I know, because I've been in that situation when we didn't have our own factory and we were partnering, and I would see that happen to other people. And we knew we needed to have complete control of our manufacturing processes so that we could be, operate with integrity and keep those timelines as consistent as possible.
So it sounds like that helps too, because your team is right next to where the manufacturing process is taking place. You have more control over the touch points.
Yes, definitely. I mean, that when we first started and we had partnered with a lot of manufacturing, furniture manufacturers in Southern California. And really, we've worked with several up and down the West Coast. But having your own factory we knew that was something we were going to have to do if we wanted to really grow.
And that makes total sense. So with this step that you had taken about managing the manufacturing process start to finish, what would you say, how has that affected the way that you work with designers and clients? I know you've touched on this a little bit earlier, but any other points you'd like to share about that?
I would say that when we communicate about the projects, we're doing it with full confidence in that we can be completely transparent because we have all the information. So sometimes we wouldn't have all the information. We'd be like, well, this is the timeline we've received from, this fabricator for this part. But if they're late, then what we've said to you is going to be late as well. Now we own, almost everything is made in our own factory. The metalwork is the only thing that's coming from outside our factory. And it's a family-owned business that's, 15 miles away. So everything else is right here in our factory. And sometimes we can't accomplish a goal, right? Sometimes it's like, oh, can we do this in this time frame? And I can say with full honesty, like yes or no. I can be completely transparent about what the challenge it would be about that type of time frame or about that ask. And that makes a huge difference in the way we're not operating on, well, we hope we can get it done. I can tell you for sure, here's where we're at, which makes a big difference.
So transparency is key, and that's you operate on integrity and you operate on transparency. So those sounds like two very big goals.
Correct. Yes.
And going back to what you were saying earlier about blending that warm residential feel, but making it commercially ready. So how do you keep that balance while growing both your custom and standard collections?
A big part of our new collection just launched and that we're about to launch is that they're easy to customize. So it sort of bridges the gap between a fully custom project and something where we already have the framework established and we're just making adjustments. So we can work in either way, but as we grow the idea is to develop new styles that are easy for our customers to customize, makes it the whole process very quick. So a lot of new designs are also informed by our customers. Here's something that's missing. I get this request all the time and I need to be able to change this about it and I can't. And what can Emblem do? That's a big force that sort of guides our roadmap for new introductions.
As far as commercial design firms reaching out to you, do you have any advice on what they can do based on your experience of issues or challenges that you've come across, obstacles, anything that they can essentially do to mitigate challenges and make sure their project goes as smoothly as possible?
Well, I think working with our company or really any company that you're working with that's manufacturing something to order. So custom or, making it as you order it, that upfront vulnerable communication is important to make sure that they can be successful for you. So we do get requests where, and I understand not sharing the name of the project and that sort of thing. That's completely understandable. But more so if you have firm budget constraints, if you have firm timeline constraints, we often will make recommendations. Like, I know you like this design, but what I heard you say is the budget is very competitive. So here's how we might change that design or that tension to accomplish your goal at a different price point. But if we just get a request for something, we don't know the quantity of it or the timeline or the budget, we'll still provide a quote, but it may not accomplish it may not meet those boundaries because we don't know what they are. So really, in any project, that's a key part of being successful at the beginning of the project. Knowing the time frame in advance really also helps, because we do get a lot of requests and maybe half of them give us some idea of timeline. And that's a challenge to know, well, when would you be putting this order in approximately if we were to get the project? Because it's hard for me to quote a timeline if I don't know around the time period this might be going to purchase, or maintain pricing if it's 2 years out. What kind of conversation can we have to make sure you have everything to be successful in a project?
So really having their ducks in a row before they reach out to you.
Well, or just being open to a conversation where we get the ducks in a row together. Right. So if they're like, look, I don't really know, that's fine. I mean, you can just say that. It's more like if you have that information, but you think maybe, you're part, like a company like Emblem or any quotes that you're putting out, you think, well, I'll get a better price if I, do X, Y, or Z. We always give the best price we can give. I mean, we really try to, we want to be competitive so that you can be competitive. So we're not going to inflate your price because your budget is more. We'll just ask, like, what aspects of this design are important, because the more exposed wood, for example, will drive up costs. Sometimes we can suggest, using a different type of fabric. We have lots of direct relationships with fabric manufacturers. So we can buy fabric by the roll instead of by the yard. So sometimes we can offer some savings there. So it's more about, we can apply our creativity for your budget if we have an idea of what it is.
I see what you're saying. So it sounds like having that open communication and having some form of organization at the very start of the project, even if they don't know specifically every detail as far as the timeline and the budget. And then also you mentioned being open to plan B, or being open to alternative options if there's some type of, budget constraint or design constraint, so that, they can still achieve their project goals, but maybe just through a different avenue.
Right. And just knowing how the piece is going to be used is important to us. If we get a request and we're like, well, what type of project is this? Is it at a restaurant? Is it a hotel? Is this a workspace, multifamily? How many people are going to be using it? Is it open to the public? I mean, the seat height is important. And if someone has mobility issues, they're going to have they're going to have a hard time getting in and out of maybe a 15 or 16 inch seat height. So there's some things we would suggest depending on how this product is being used. So some of it is just basic information that a lot of designers give anyway, but the full picture is really helpful to having less surprises down the road.
When you say most designers have that information, so they'll present that information to you, but it's still good to know, it's reassuring to know that you're still looking over those little gaps that could be missed, right?
Definitely. We are, and that's a big part of the way we operate. I don't, not every company is combing through specs, because some of the specs we receive are kind of boilerplate and they aren't applicable to your job. So we'll get like a long list of rules, or like, well, this isn't actually, this is talking about materials and things that aren't part of this specific job. So, what I'm sort of talking about is sort of like the intention of the actual job that we're working on together is super helpful, in addition to any specifications that you have as a firm. That's of course important.
That goes back to, we were talking about your signature sauce and you having that consultative approach. You're really maybe combing through, like you said, a little bit more than other companies may.
Sometimes, I'm not entirely sure, because I know that there's a lot of good fabricators out there. But what we do is, yes, we spend a lot of time. That's why it's the other aspect, I guess, if I was to say making things successful, is asking for like a 1-day turnaround on a custom quote is very difficult, because of that we take a consultative approach. We're often doing some pre-engineering for a quote. So if it's large, we'll say we need a week. a few days. And so that's sometimes a challenging, I know, because designers sometimes are put in positions where they have to do quick quotes. So another thing we've done is we'll say, we can give you a broad estimate. In banquettes, here's what you can expect per lineal foot for design like this, if you're just trying to put a budgetary number together. So rather than going the full quote route. So that's another instance where we try to be helpful at the beginning of the project.
So design firms can reach out for a preliminary quote, and then it just depends on what they're looking for as far as how long that quote takes to get to reach back to them.
How big the project is, how many pieces, and how much custom is within the piece. But right now, I mean, we do sometimes we do up to 10 quotes a day. So it is like a high. So it depends on the week, whether how many we have coming in and what's in the pipeline. But if you need your quote back soon, that's just let it know. Like, I'm under the gun. Are you able to get this back in 2 days and 3 days? And we'll, again, be completely honest. Yes, we can do that. We'll prioritize it for you. Or no, we're not able to for this particular design. That's just another instance of good two-way communication.
I see. And another question I had for you was, any recommendations as far as how early design firms should reach out? If they're not on a crunch time, what would you say would be the best timeline, if any? I know it might also vary based on the project.
Sure. I mean, as early as you can, just to establish any, questions. We can work with a variable, lots of different types of timelines. We're working on a project right now that they need to install at the end of February, and we're quoting it now. That's a quite tight time frame for the type of project they're working on. And we just started, working on it with them. Ideally, backing it up to before you're in construction, maybe, or like 20 weeks out, something like that, so that we can realize maybe some more cost savings and things that happen at the beginning of the project would be ideal. But again, we all wish we had, more time than we often have. So we work with a variety of time frames.
So it sounds like you'll do your best to accommodate, reach out as early as you can and at least start the conversation.
Right. Well,
So looking ahead, what new directions or projects do you envision for Emblem in the coming years in the commercial side of A&D?
We're working on new sort of designs. We're developing a lot of different types of banquettes, modular, mobile type seating are a big areas of development for us. So that's an area that we've been growing into for a while. It seems like certainly every hospitality project, but more and more workplace, multifamily, all have these, banquettes because they're communal spaces. So we do a lot of banquettes. That's a big area for us. The other projects that we're hoping to develop are more of lines of furniture for particular clients. So if we work with a designer and they have a customer who maybe has a broader need and they want to design with us sort of maybe a line of furniture that they can continue to order over time for new locations, or that's something we've just started doing in the last year or so, which is really exciting to us. For corporate offices where they're developing sort of their standards, but they might not be ordering large amounts at a time. So we'll develop this collection, but maybe they're just ordering 10 pieces now and 5 pieces 2 months from now, and, sort of spacing it out over time. That's a new way we're starting to work more in that fashion as well.
I see. And any specific collections or fabric partnerships you're excited about that are either, have just started or coming up?
We just launched a partnership with Chimera. We have worked with Chimera for quite a while as a COM, but now it's integrated in Alliance Partnership Program. We put Blazer on a lot. We love blazers. Chimera's blazer product is beautiful. Unlike kind of maybe some smaller custom shops, we do have a variety of Alliance partnerships with Dyntex and Mill Textiles and CF Stinson. So we have a lot of options for grading in textiles. We also have our own velvet that we have as a grade 1. So velvet can be a little bit tricky to work with. So we have our own so that we know how to work with it. So we have a variety of very saturated colors that we offer. And then, like I said, we also have a special partnership with a company called Massini, where we have a standard that we're buying by the roll, which is excellent pets. So those are all exciting. Textiles are such an important part of the process. We often get people asking, the grade 4 that's within one of your alliance partnerships. So we offer that as consultative approach as well. Start talking about what are some good options from the companies that we already partner with, or we work COM, COL as well.
That's wonderful to know that you have all those avenues open. So like you said earlier, you're really concerned about the success of the project for the designer, for the customer. And so for designers and businesses considering Emblem, what would you say is the next best step for them to reach out, or anything you want them to know? The floor is yours.
We get a fair number of just a friendly email. We have hello@emblembuilt.com as our main email address. That goes to our internal team. I see those emails. And just being interested in learning more about our company, we're happy to take phone calls, share some information of past custom projects that are like, well, I didn't see like this, but we're looking for something kind of like this. What have you often we'll say, oh, yes, we've done something custom in the past. We'll send over an email. You can also check out, we just added a few pages to our website. There's an installation. Well, there's a gallery of custom that's just pictures taken of at our factory of custom projects. Great way to just quickly get that's some things that we've worked on in the past. And then, of course, we have our collection, which we are launching. This is a big launch season for us. So we make cat designs, and we have another launch happening next week. So lots going on here that's new. We can always make suggestions if you are feeling overwhelmed or know what you want and don't see it. So an email to that hello@emblembuilt. Very easy. We also have sales reps in a big portion of the country. So you can always ask us for your local sales rep that you can meet in person. They can bring samples and projects, that kind of thing.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for your time, Lindsay. And thank you everyone at home for joining us today on another episode of Industry Insiders.